Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Namaste Wellness Show, where we talk about all things holistic health for the mind, body, and spirit, for people and pets, with a touch of cultural soul. I'm Laura, your host. Thank you so much for joining me again. Today, my special guest is Deborah Lindsey. She is the owner and operator of Center for EFT Studies. She has been in the field for 23 years, and she has trained over 5,000 EFT practitioners worldwide. She has also presented on the Tapping World Summit, and she is the former president and founder of the International Metaphysical University. Welcome, Deborah, to the show. Hey.
Hey, thanks for having me. That was a really good introduction. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for being here.
No problem.
So you want to go ahead and just start off by telling us what EFT is?
Yeah. So EFT is sometimes referred to as acupuncture for the emotions, but without needles. And the thing about EFT is that's so special, I think, is that it is really the only protocol out there that is specifically designed for helping people with their emotions. So if you have a physical problem, you go to a physical doctor. If you have a mental problem, you go to a mental doctor. If you have a spiritual problem, you go to a guru or a spiritual teacher. But who do you go to if your heart is broken? And who do you go to if you've been through, the emotional trauma of, there's a million of them, right? A million kinds of emotional trauma.
Anxiety, depression,
all of it.
Mood disorders, all those things can be very daunting. Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so we have sort of interspersed that with mental health care, but it's not mental health. It is emotional health. And that's really where EFT comes in. EFT, the emotional freedom techniques, is really the world's first really effective, powerful, fast, and easy to use technique that helps people to heal their emotions.
Okay. And how long has EFT been around? And, how did it start?
So it started in the mid-1990s. So the founder of EFT is a guy named Gary Craig, right? So anybody who's studying EFT is going to find themselves, the god is Gary Craig, in my opinion. And what a wonderful person to have founded the technique. But tapping itself goes back it goes back two steps further. It goes back to ancient, to China, where they were tapping different points. But before Gary Craig was a guy named called Roger Callahan. And Roger Callahan had just studied something called Touch for Health, which is another technique that's based in touching points on the body.
Okay.
He had a client named Mary who had a water phobia, and her phobia was so severe that she couldn't even wash herself without being stressed out. Oh, nice. And so he came back one day. They were sitting by a swimming pool doing he was a psychologist, and they were doing the therapy. And she mentioned that she felt stress in her stomach. And so he thought, oh, okay, stomach meridian is right here. Oh. And he had her tap on the stomach meridian while she was looking at the water.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she said, Dr. Callahan, I'm cured.
Really?
And so after 20 years of therapy that was getting nowhere, in 1 minute of tapping on the stomach meridian, which is underneath the eye,
right,
she was able to get in the water. And so he's all stressed out, and he's like, wait. And she's like, Dr. Callahan, I'm cured. I'm not stupid. And so
wow.
She went over and got in the water.
That's almost unbelievable.
It's almost unbelievable, but it's because forever we've been treating emotional health care in the wrong place, right? We've been looking in the physical body, we've been looking in the mental body. It's not, it's in the emotional body, it's in the energy body. Right. And when you clear the blockages in the energy body, emotional issues can go away that quickly.
And did you say, is that the same, the emotional body, those points, are those the same as meridian points as in traditional Chinese medicine?
Yeah, because your emotions are electrical in nature, they run through the energy body. They run through the energy body, and that's where they get stuck. So if you're trying to talk somebody out of being stressed, if you're trying to talk somebody out of being traumatized, it doesn't work. Why? Because the trauma is in a blockage in the energy system, and that's where it stays stuck. And when you go in and you tap through and you clear out that blockage in the energy system, then the emotional charge can just dissipate, and they can go back to being as if it never happened.
Wow. Okay. So that's interesting. I guess I had never thought of that. And just by the way, for our viewers and our listeners, I'm actually doing the training with you. So I'm really learning a lot, but I didn't realize, I guess I must have oversighted this particular description of it. Yeah. So now Gary, wasn't he a scientist or something before he started, or what was he doing before?
Stanford trained engineer.
Okay, he was an engineer. Wow. I just find it very fascinating when someone that has like a more of a scientific mind would, how would they connect with the emotional part of life, or what be considered non-scientific or spiritual?
Yeah.
Well, how did was there something that happened to him that made him begin to start studying more from a spiritual point of view?
So I don't know if there was something that happened to him. I think he was just an open-minded person,
Okay.
Like being a scientist doesn't mean that someone has to be closed-minded. In his case, I mean, I think for many people, they have to see everything in black and white. Gary did not.
Okay.
And he was a personal performance coach who was helping people to improve their performance. And so he came across Roger Callahan's training, which was called TFT, which was the first of the modern tapping therapies, right?
And you said TFT stood for what now?
Thought field therapy. That was Callahan.
Thought field therapy. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get into teaching?
So let me give you a little bit of the transition there. So Gary went and took the thought field therapy training, which was very complicated. It had all sorts of algorithms, and it was $100,000 to take the training in the 90s, and was really only, for a very elite class. And Gary took the training and went home and started experimenting with it and simplified it into what we now know as EFT, or the emotional freedom technique, removing all of the crazy algorithms, all of the, the unnecessary complication. Gary simplified the process and then brought it to the world. And that's how I got to it.
Okay.
So in the 90s, I came down with anxiety. I was working in Washington, D.C. I had started a business working in the music industry, and it was just, it was very stressful.
Stressful.
Yeah, it was so stressful. I was a farm kid living in the big city, and I had so many people pulling at me all the time, needing something from me. Okay. And
what was your position at that point?
So, I had started my own business, which was in the music industry, a little company called Local Music Store, which was an artist development and distribution company.
Oh, okay.
And we were helping unsigned bands get famous in the day of, record stores still existed back then.
Yeah.
And my anxiety was through the roof, and I recognized it because my mom had had anxiety before me. Like my whole life, I would just remember my mom being debilitated by anxiety. She had been in and out of what we called the seventh floor at the hospital on a lot of different occasions. And she lived with depression and anxiety, and she'd done the traditional things. She'd done the pills and she'd done the counseling. And none of it had worked.
You knew you didn't want to go that route, right?
Yeah, I knew I wasn't going there. And so I just started looking under every rock, because it had gotten so bad that I had this big government-sized desk in my office, and I would just go under that desk and curl up in fetal position until I could screw up the courage to come out.
Okay. I want to back up a little bit, because I didn't want to sound like I was offensive to, because I recently had a psychiatrist on and psychologist, and I would never tell anyone not to take their medications or anything like that.
Right.
I just assumed that your mom did all those medications, but it really didn't help. So she, so you saw that, I'm assuming, and that made you want to try something different. So I just wanted to reframe a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not slam on any other professions.
Right.
For some people, psychology works, psychiatry works, counseling works. Those things could be really helpful to the right people. They were not helpful for my mom.
Got you. Okay.
And I wasn't doing it.
Okay.
And I didn't have healthcare in those days anyway, so it wasn't an option, even if I wanted to, And so I started looking under every rock. I studied a couple different forms of alternative healthcare. And then I was actually doing an alternative healthcare fair in the town where I was living. And I was obviously in bad place. I was shaking. I could barely function. And this guy named Ken, who I'd never seen before or since, came up to me and said, "Do you want to tap?" And at that point, I was like, "I'll try anything."
Right. So you didn't even know what he was talking about at that point.
Never heard of it. It was 1997. No, it was, I had come down with anxiety really bad in 97.
Okay.
This was now 2000.
Okay.
Yeah. 1999, 2000.
Okay.
And so he showed me tapping, and I've never seen anything like it before. And so, of course, I rolled my eyes at how absolutely ridiculous this was.
Right.
Right? Like everybody has that response.
A lot of times when people are not familiar with alternative approaches, that's the first thing they do. I've had people roll my eyes at things like laughter yoga or whatever, anything that doesn't sound familiar or people don't really understand. So
yeah, it's true. And I saw no correlation between tapping on my body and getting rid of anxiety. I didn't recognize that it's because my emotions live in my energy body, and my energy body runs through the meridians on my body. And so the reason I had anxiety was because I had blockages in my energy system, and that by tapping on my energy system, I could calm the anxiety.
Okay.
I had no correlation.
Okay. So it sounds like tapping, if I can just ask a quick question, and you probably were going to move into that. What types of conditions or illnesses do you recommend people tap for, in addition to the anxiety or, that type of thing? Can you tap on just any or everything, or what do you tap on?
Yeah. I mean, Gary Craig says try it on everything, because there's no harm, right? There's no harm. You can try it on everything.
Right.
And it's being successfully used for so many different manifestations of these blockages. And so that's all they are. They're manifestations of emotional blockages, of energetic blockages in the body. So it can manifest as anxiety. It can manifest as depression. It can manifest as nail biting. It can manifest as physical illness. It can manifest in, anything that's happening in your physical body first had a response in the emotional body. Okay. So PTSD is a big one. Heartache, if you have heartache, self-esteem issues can be addressed. Well, heart conditions start with heartache.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
You know, I should have a list in front of me, but Lord, it's endless, the things that you can tap on.
Well, it can be, it sounds like any type of physical condition, high blood pressure, any of your chronic illnesses, maybe cancer. Can you tap on a cancer condition? Can you tap on a, you know, well, one thing I think that you said in one of our sessions was that, because I had said I have this ringing in my ear, and you were saying that was one of the things it doesn't really help with. And I was like, oh man, because sometimes I have that buzzing in the ear and stuff.
Right.
Are there any other conditions that maybe you wouldn't use? Was there something you wouldn't use tapping for?
Well, I have had people come back and tell me that they had success tapping for ringing in the ears. Really? I have never had success with it, right? I've never had success with it. But I have had students come back and tell me that they had success with it. So it doesn't hurt to try. That's the thing. But it's not the kind of thing like if somebody shows up and they've got anxiety or they've got PTSD or they've got limiting beliefs or they've got trauma, those are things that are easy, right?
So when you say limiting beliefs, that's an emotion? How would you define a limiting belief?
So limiting beliefs are usually created from emotional experiences. Mm-hmm. So for example, if you have a teacher or a parent or a person in authority yell at you when you're young and tell you that you're a piece of crap or you're never going to grow up to be anything, right? That has an emotional
feeling. It makes you feel a certain way if someone says that to you.
And probably then
mad or sad or depressed or whatever.
Right. And it's also that sort of like shock, right? Like, why would you say that? Like that feeling that you get when something just happened that you feel your whole energy system lock up.
Okay. Oh.
And so somebody says to you, you're so fat and ugly. You're so stupid. You're never going to be anything. And that gets stuck in your energy system and then manifests as low self-esteem, or it manifests as a limiting belief that you're never going to be able to accomplish anything, or you're never going to be lovable. So those are limiting beliefs, but they tend to come about because you've had underlying emotional trauma.
Got it. Okay. So, and how do you do tapping?
So you do tapping. So what you need to do first is, so first I should just show you the tapping algorithm, right? Okay. Because to show you how to do tapping is a little bit more complicated, but let's just start by learning how to tap.
Okay. Right? And I'll tap along with you because we may have some viewers at some point, because this is video and audio. So as you tap, you'll tell us where you're tapping, and then for the viewers, they'll be able to see how to do it.
Good instructions.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to start by, and there's different ways of doing EFT. I'm just going to show you some real basics. Okay.
All right.
So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to tap. So I want you to take your hand and take your non-dominant hand and make it and sort of fold your fingers in on top.
Okay.
And then on the side of your hand, on the outside of your hand, and this would be underneath the pinky for the people who are listening. Okay. There's a fatty area on the side, on the outside of the hand, underneath the pinky. Oh. And you're going to tap with your dominant hand. You're going to tap on that fatty area of your hand. So you can tap with one finger. You can tap with 2, 3. I use all 4 fingers when I'm tapping there, just because I cover more territory.
Right. Yeah. And why are we tapping here?
Well, it's a meridian point here, but this is used to correct something called psychological reversal, which is just going to be too complicated for the people at home because it's going to take me too much time to actually teach them what that means or why.
Okay.
But that's why we tap on this point first.
Okay.
And while we are tapping on this point, we are going to identify the problem as clearly as we can.
Okay.
So in this case, I don't like to use something as general as anxiety because it's not necessarily, you need to get more specific. But in this case, we're going to try that just to see if we can get some results. So what you do is you say, even though I have this problem, and in this case, we're going to say this feeling of anxiety. Okay. So before we do that, I want you to take a second and feel the feeling of anxiety that you have in this moment, assuming you have a feeling of anxiety. If you don't have a feeling of anxiety, whatever feeling is coming up, what feeling do you have?
Yeah.
And give that a number between 0 and 10. Is it no feeling at all, or is it like an overwhelming feeling of anxiety?
Okay. So 1 being the least amount of anxiety, 10 being the most amount of anxiety.
Exactly.
So we can say, I'll say, how about around a 5?
Okay.
It's like I always have some level of anxiety. So,
right.
Yeah.
And that's normal.
One thing or another. Okay.
Okay. So you got that feeling right now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, not as much, but I, was just trying to give an idea of how you could say, on a scale from 1 to 10, if you have like maybe a 5. I mean, yeah. So
okay.
you can start with that. Yeah.
I think that's
So
a
say
good.
it we do. Say it we do. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think just being on this podcast gives you a certain level of anxiety.
Yeah. Well, you want it to be nice. You want it to be fun. You want people to enjoy, what you're sharing with them, and give them some hope and that you can. These are techniques that you can use to help you with emotional anxiety, depression. So I think we're sharing good information. And by the way, you might be familiar with, they're saying young teenage girls right now are experiencing high levels of anxiety and hopelessness. So this is something that I think we're sharing that maybe their parent might be interested in trying. And in addition to any other therapy that they're receiving, this is not going to interfere with it, correct? You can go, you can see your psychiatrist and still get tapping. In fact, there have been some psychologists that I know in our local area, they're using tapologists or emotional freedom technique practitioners in their therapeutic practice.
Yeah, it's a good point. It doesn't interfere with anything.
Right.
And you can do it on top of taking pills. If that's what you're doing, you can take it on top of therapy, other things. And it's just complementary to that work.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So do you
I also think you make a really good point, is that look, it's a world full of stressed out people right now. Exactly. And life isn't easy for anybody, for none of us. Yeah. Life isn't easy for any of us. And so when life is coming at you, even if you are completely, normal in every other way, you're going to get stressed out. And this technique,
I guess, quote unquote, what society thinks is normal,
yeah, what is normal?
Yeah, what is normal, right? Mm-hmm.
Right. But this technique is going to help you to just calm down, if nothing else, right?
Right. So you can use it in like an acute situation if you're experiencing anxiety and you need like a right now technique that you can use. So I think that's what makes EFT so powerful and so helpful.
Yeah. So I've often thought we should have EFT practitioners in emergency rooms at hospitals.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. Yeah. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. So if you want, go ahead and
So let's go back. So you have anxiety. We've given it a number, which we call a SUDS, which is between a 0 and 10. And you're saying you have a level 5 level of stress. Mm-hmm. And you can tell that because you feel like maybe a little tension in your breathing. You feel a little tension in the body. You're on kind of a little bit of an alert. And that's the indications that you're a 5 out of 10. If you were a 10, you might be crying. You might be losing your crap right now, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And then you're going to use this phrase, even though I have this anxiety, and you will repeat after me.
Okay. Even though I have this anxiety,
I love, accept, and forgive myself.
I love, accept, and forgive myself.
And we're going to say that same thing 3 times. Even though I have this anxiety,
Even though I have this anxiety,
I love, accept, and forgive myself.
I love, accept, and forgive myself.
Again, even though I have this
anxiety, I love, forgive, and accept myself.
Right. And it can be in any order. It's really just about taking the stress off, right? Mm-hmm. Now, we're going to tap on the very top of our head. Mm-hmm. And you're going to tap with, don't hurt yourself. And at whatever speed or pace feels right to you, kind of like tapping on a drum. Mm-hmm. And you're going to say the reminder phrase, which is, in this case, this anxiety.
This anxiety.
Okay. Now, see, that just relieves some stress for me because I left it I breathed out, right?
Good, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So right here on the beginning of the eye.
Inner eye.
I'm going to tap right there. Now, it's on the eyebrow, near the nose, at the beginning of the eye right there. Mm-hmm. And you're going to say this anxiety.
This anxiety.
Now, go to the outside of the eye. And there's like a bone that goes around the outside of the eye. You're going to tap right on that bone at the corner of the eye. Mm-hmm. And say again, this anxiety.
This anxiety.
Okay. And now underneath the eye, in that soft tissue underneath the eye, you don't want to be all the way down on the cheekbone. You want to be up in that sort of soft, tender area right underneath the eye, but don't poke yourself in the eye.
Don't tap too hard, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a tender area. Yeah. And then go under the nose.
Mm-hmm. This anxiety.
Right. And under the lip, there's this indent right there. Mm-hmm. And tap on that indent.
This anxiety.
Now you're going to go down to the collarbone, and you're going to feel like the knob at the middle. If you follow the collarbone to the center, you're going to feel a knob.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of sore there. It's usually kind of sore, right there. Uh-huh.
Well, the sore spot is really out here, more like in the chest.
Oh, so the collarbone and the sore spot are 2 different points.
They are 2 different points.
Okay. Right. So I'm learning something else today.
Good.
Okay.
So tap
and it's okay to tap both sides too, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of people do. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. It's okay. Mm-hmm. And then underneath of the arm, for women, it's like I sometimes say under the pit or under the pit, under the pit and beside the nip. So like it's like a on the spot underneath the arm where the bra strap is on your side.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's usually a tender spot there.
Yep, I can feel, it is tender right there. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we're going to go down and we're going to do the finger points. Now, I know a lot of people, if you're looking at YouTube, are not going to see the finger points, but I think they're really important. So we're going to use them.
Yeah.
So hold out your hand as if you're shaking hands with someone. Mm-hmm. And on the outside of the thumb nail, you're going to tap right there. Mm-hmm. And say this anxiety.
This anxiety.
The next finger in the exact same place.
This anxiety.
Next finger in the exact same place.
This anxiety.
Now, in traditional EFT, you're going to skip the ring finger. But in this case, for reasons that I'm not going to explain, we're going to add it back in.
Okay.
So,
anxiety.
Right, this anxiety. Pinky, this anxiety.
This anxiety.
And go back to the side of your hand, this anxiety. Okay. Now take a deep breath in. And then take a second and see if you feel any different.
I feel kind of, like uplifted. I feel uplifted feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people report that feeling, or they report just an overall sense of calming.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I feel uplifted, and it's like a release, like it's okay. I'm okay. Everything's working out for me. There's nothing, so yeah, I totally believe. I had an experience when I was doing the level 1 with you, and I was watching the video with Gary talking about addiction. And what I liked about it, he was doing a workshop and he had people bring something that they were quote unquote addicted to. So it might be a cigarette, it might be chocolate, which was what I chose. And just doing that video to this day, I mean, I really every day felt like I had to eat some chocolate, you know. And I'm not really supposed to have chocolate because, a long time ago, not so much now, I was diagnosed with a slight prolapse mitral valve, heart valve. And I didn't have any restrictions. The cardiologist didn't say I had to do anything. But one of the things she said was stay away from chocolate because has a stimulant in it, right? And I just, couldn't stop every day. Even if I wasn't eating it, I was thinking about it. And honest to God, since I did just that video with Gary Null and the chocolate, I can eat chocolate now. I still love it. I still like it. But that craving really, so I was really sold at that point and
cool.
Really impressed, seriously, because to this day, I can pick up a piece of chocolate. I couldn't pick up a piece of chocolate and not eat it. And right now, I don't even have any chocolate in the house. So that's
awesome.
It's my testimony that really sold me on it, So I'm still working with the tinnitus, but or the
tinnitus.
But tinnitus, yeah.
So,
thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you doing that demonstration for us. And did it help you? How did you feel?
Yeah, I feel much more calm.
Okay,
these things stress me out too.
Okay.
I remember I used to be a person who had anxiety so debilitating that I couldn't function in the world. So what EFT has done for me is like, I can't even imagine what my life would look like if I hadn't learned EFT. I could be still in counseling and taking pills and living a diminished life, these 25 years later, if it weren't for EFT.
Wow.
And, that doesn't mean that I don't still get stressed out. It doesn't mean that I still don't get anxiety or that I don't have.
Though, really, we all, have stress, in our lives. It's just really what tools we have. And again, I think EFT is a great tool. Yoga
is an incredible tool.
There's a lot of tools out there. It just depends on what resonates or what resonates with a person.
Yeah.
And I think EFT has really resonated with me, and I'm hoping, at some point I'm, complete the course and everything, and I would really love to use it in my own practice.
Of course. Yeah. And honestly, there's nothing for me like, I started by working on myself and healing myself. And then I went on and took Gary's training. And that was, like I said, 1999, 2000.
Yeah.
And it was so transformative for me that I went on to help other people. And so I sat in the seat with clients for 12 years. And that's like day in, day out, just working with people with everything. And what happens is you start to, basically what I was doing was watching miracles for a living. I was watching people coming in with, just, lifetimes of trauma, what felt like lifetimes of trauma, people that could barely function in the world who were suicidal. I worked with people who had, severe fibromyalgia. I worked with people who had lost loved ones and had been lost in grief for sometimes decades. People with PTSD, of course, from war trauma, all kinds of sexual trauma. That seems to be the thing that shows up most often in my practice.
Oh, wow.
Was sexual trauma. And, I just feel like I've seen everything that could possibly come through the seat over those 12 years of day in, day out seeing clients. And then at that point, I started doing the training online. And so I still took clients, but I dropped it down to a much smaller practice and started focusing more on teaching. And now I've been teaching.
Tell us more. Why don't you talk about your training program a little bit then? No.
So we were the first people to take the EFT training online in the world. And we did that when I still was the head of the International Metaphysical University. Mm-hmm. And then we transitioned that later to the Center for EFT Studies.
Oh.
And it started at IMU.
Wow. Okay.
And then transitioned to Center for EFT Studies. And it's a really comprehensive training, as you can attest to.
Yes, it is. I wanted to say in the mentorship part of it, I did purchase Caroline Miss's, and actually my guest last week. Let me, I'll be right back. Let me show you.
Sure.
Yeah, this book from my guest last week is the owner of the Mayflower bookstore, and he has, it's a wonderful bookstore. It's all kind of books, but I've had this book for years. I don't know if you can see it. Caroline.
I love that book. That book changed my life.
Yeah, I actually got this from the bookstore owner who was on my show podcast last week. And so I love her work. She's a spiritual, medical intuitive. And so I'm a little excited about getting more into that mentorship part, because now it kind of explains you being the president and founder of the International Metaphysical University, because this is, something that kind of goes right along with. And I noticed in some of the courses, sessions with you, the Zoom sessions with you, that you talk a lot about metaphysical. So it's just all kind of coming together now. So
I try not to espouse any one religion or belief system. But I do think that there are universal truths that we find in all religions, and that they can be found in EFT as well, But that Sacred Contracts book, that book changed my life, because it really helps me as an EFT practitioner as well, because I can often see in you what your contracts might be and where you might be missing out on what you're really supposed to be doing in this lifetime. And so through tapping, we can figure out what's holding you back and help you to get to your highest potential.
Nice.
Those sorts of things too.
Yeah, I like that.
So
okay, so and go ahead. You were saying about your whole training program.
Training, So we offer certification training for professional EFT practitioners. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody can't take the training specifically with the intention of healing themselves. We have a lot of people who do that as well.
Right.
And so we have a level 1 and a level 2 certification training. I have them combined together. And that is to become an EFT practitioner. And then we have the level 3 training, which is the EFT master certification training. And the training is 100% online. I think it's the most comprehensive training available to anybody in the world on EFT.
Yes, comprehensive. And you taught in person for a while too, correct?
For a long time, yeah. I started teaching it live in person around 2002, first with just my friends, and then later with people in the general public. And and those classes started to build. I would sometimes get 3 or 4 people, and sometimes I would get 30 or 40 people in a training. And but the trainings tended to be, in those days, the trainings were only a few days long. They might be a 3-day workshop, and people would walk out with a certification. And what I quickly realized was that it was absolutely not enough training. And I remember having a conversation with Gary Craig about it one time, and he's like, "You're right, it's not enough training. So make it a longer training." But who could, because people had to come live and people had to travel to come to my training, who could take off a week of work? Right.
Yeah.
And, or who was going to travel twice, who was going to hop a plane and come to my training twice to get it. So the classes always remained sort of mitigated by the circumstances.
Okay.
But once I took it online, those barriers didn't exist anymore. And I could teach people everything that they needed to learn to be really a great EFT practitioner. And I could be there every step of the way, and they could have unlimited tapping partners, and we could have the community like we have with the mentorship program, like we have with the Facebook group. It just took it to a whole nother level. And I wouldn't go back to teaching it live anymore. I don't think it's fair to students. And even even if I could teach them everything, they can't absorb or remember everything. Even if you did it in a week or a 10-day workshop, who's going to remember everything they learned in 10 days?
Yeah, I know I did it. I mean, I took a weekend training in EFT with my husband's aunt. And that was what, 10, 15 years ago, I want to say. And then we even had an EFT practitioner come and do a Saturday training at our church. So, but and then it just fell away because I didn't really think about it anymore. So I was really happy to find your program, when.
Yeah. And those kinds of trainings are great because it introduces people to the concept, teaches them how to do basic tapping and gets them started. But for people who really feel that call to either heal themselves on a really deep level or to go off and help others as a professional, then the more extensive, comprehensive training is, it's necessary.
Way to go. Well, I think that, we have covered a lot during the show. Deborah, would you like to share your contact information, your website, or any information so that if anyone wanted to contact you, they could get more information?
So anybody can go to the website at centerforeftstudies.com. That's CenterForStudies.com. They can email me at Deborah at they can email me at Deborah at online EFT certification. Wait, what did I just do? I gave you the wrong information.
Is that your email?
You can go to CenterForEFTstudies.com.
Okay.
But the real address to go to is onlineeftcertification.com.
Okay.
That is so funny. I don't know what happened there. But yeah, we do have CenterForEFTstudies.com, but it gets transferred over to onlineeftcertification.com.
Yeah.
And that all has to do with our history. But anyway, and they can email me at Deborah at onlineeftcertification.com or pick up the phone and call me.
Okay.
Like I'm the one teacher out there that you can actually pick up the phone and call.
And she is telling the truth because every time I have called, she answers the phone. I think it's awesome. Thank you so much for being there.
Well, I've had the same phone number
or she'll email you right back. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
Thanks. Yeah. So my phone number is 304-295-4411.
Say it one more time.
304-295-4411.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, to me, I'm not trying to shuffle you off on everybody else.
Oh,
you're in my company and I'm going to be there for you. Right. That's how I feel.
Well, I know I surely appreciate it. And I like, that everything is so organized and straightforward. And it's, it's you go at your own pace pretty much, So, all right. So is there anything else, any tips that you want to share with any viewers or listeners or any last tips or words you'd like to share?
Well,
EFT.
One thing they could do, because we didn't get a lot of time really to teach people how to do EFT, is they could go to my website at onlineeftcertification.com and they could sign up for the free intro to EFT course.
Okay.
And that might be helpful for some people to get more information.
Sure. So I want to ask, what was your favorite thing about EFT? And do you have something that you that might not be your favorite thing about EFT that you can share?
I think my favorite thing is having a tool that I'm going to give two answers to that. Number one is, for me personally, it's having a tool for those times when I'm really stressed out that I can just get myself calm in a second and that I don't have to turn to pills or any of that kind of crap.
Right.
But for me, the real answer to that is that it has given my life meaning because I have had the pleasure of helping people. I don't even know how to explain it. It sounds so corny, but when you're sitting across from someone And they are like, I think about this one woman who came to me, and she had been a client before. And I think I even talk about this in the class. And I get the phone call when I get home, and she's like, Deborah, can you call me? And I call her, and she had just come home to discover her husband had a lawnmower accident, and she had discovered him.
Oh, that's so wow.
And had tons of guilt because he was out mowing the lawn late at night because she had bitched at him.
Oh, wow.
Get it done because the family was coming tomorrow, and she didn't want the lawn to be looking bad when the family came. And so she had called him and bitched at him to go mow the lawn. And so he was out there way too late at night and had a lawnmower accident, which was not pretty to find. And she called me absolutely traumatized,
I'm sure,
with nowhere to turn, right? So no amount of counseling was going to solve that, in my opinion. No amount of pills was going to help her with that.
Okay.
And so I was like, get your butt in here. And she came in, and we started tapping on all of that trauma right away.
Okay.
And watching her go from somebody who could not get through her day, who could not, she had a small kid at home on top of that, who she also had to parent while she was grieving, while she was feeling guilty, while she was unsure what her future looked like, while she still had to figure out how to get up and go to work, and how to, what she was going to do with the house and his clothes and the funeral and all of those things, in complete overwhelm.
Right.
And me being there to help her deal with the trauma and the stress of that until she was able to, just move through it in a way that, of course, she was going to miss her husband. Of course, she was going to mourn. Of course, all of those things were going to happen. But she could move through that easily, much more easily than somebody who didn't. In contrast to that, she had sent me a friend many years later. She sent me a friend to work with, who had been engaged with a guy who they had their wedding set up, and it's a very complicated story, but he goes away to on like a motorcycle ride for charity or something. And we were in West Virginia. She was in West Virginia, Ohio. The guy had gone on a motorcycle ride in Michigan and had a motorcycle accident and had been beheaded.
Oh my gosh.
And the family, or the family had left it for her to go identify.
Wow.
Right?
So that must, I mean, I can't even imagine that, but I mean.
Yeah, horrible. And she collapsed under it. 20 years later, she was still living in his parents' basement. She had not been able to go back to work. She had never been able to have another relationship. Wow. She had never been able to move on from that experience or recovered from that experience 20 years later. Wow. And she came in and she saw me. We did one session, and I thought, that was a good session. She's going to see some change. And then I expected her to come back. It can take a while. Never came back. I saw her.
Okay.
Yeah, she never came back. And I was like, oh, I don't know. What did I do wrong? You never know.
Right.
And then I ran into her at 7-Eleven sometime later. And I was like, hey, Suzanne, how are you? Right? Like, yeah. And I was like, forgive me, but why didn't you ever come back?
Right.
And she said, I didn't need to. She said it was done in 1 hour. I was able to get up, to move out of their house, to get started with my life again, to get a job, and to move on. So in contrast, while one of them had been able to move on relatively quickly, within the next time I saw the first client, like 6 months later, she was engaged to someone else. Whereas the second client had been completely frozen in place for, and the first client might have been honestly a year later. I don't think it was 6 months, but like a year later, she had already moved on and was back to work and had, was getting on with her life. And the second client had lost 20 years. And then with 1 hour of tapping was able to move on. So anyway, I'm sure I'm over time.
Those are some very powerful stories. And if EFT can help with those types of things, then it sounds like it can help with just about any and everything. So
yeah, and that's the power. That's what you asked what I love about EFT. I love that moment when you look and you go, okay, I changed a life today.
Right. Okay. Well, sounds good. Thank you so much for sharing and being with us today. And I hope you all really got something out of this, and we'll contact Deb about more information if you need to. You have her website, you have her phone number, 304-295-4412. Center for 4411. Sorry about that.
Mm-hmm.
And Center for EFT Studies.com. So with that being said, thanks for being here, Deborah. And thank you everyone for watching, listening. Until next time, stay safe, stay well. Namaste.
Thanks, Laura.